So this is going to be why only 4 times in recorded history a Category 5 hurricane made landfall in the United States. This happened twice in American history, and the first time was the 1935 Labor Day hurricane. So after it struck Cuba as a Category 5 hurricane, it was obviously going to do a lot of damage in the U.S. It struck Florida as a Category 5 hurricane and killed at least 400 people around. It struck obviously on Labor Day and then continued up the East Coast and did damage. I'm not too familiar with this, nor was I with 1969's Hurricane Camille. So Camille was only used once. Hurricane Carla was a Category 5 hurricane that did major flooding around Texas and was the first major hurricane to strike. It was the last major hurricane to strike Texas until 2017's Hurricane Harvey. Hurricane Camille was only the second hurricane to do more than $1 billion in damage at the time. However, it wasn't ever the costliest hurricane because Hurricane Betsy did only $40 million more in damage when it struck Louisiana just 4 years earlier as a Category 4. This was a Category 5, and it struck by Loxie, Mississippi. It killed 259 people and did extensive damage to that area of somewhere from New Orleans, Louisiana to Pensacola, Florida. Basically the same area Hurricane Nate hit, but it was a lot stronger and did a lot more damage. So why wasn't it used in 1965? Well, Hurricane Carol was a hurricane that did extensive damage. It was a Category 3, and at peak strength, it struck somewhere on Long Island. Not totally familiar with the exact locale. And then it moved on to Connecticut, striking that as a Category 3 hurricane. And it was the costliest hurricane at the time. It did somewhere in the range of $700 million to $800 million in damage. A lot for a hurricane. And it was the costliest at the time. And appropriately was retired. At first it was retired for 10 years, but in 1969 they changed it. So it was used in 1965, but only in 1965. So that's Camille for you. The next one was Hurricane Andrew of 1992. This was a Category 5 hurricane. It only killed 65 people, and only 26 of them were direct. 18 people died when a single bridge in Miami collapsed, and that's what it hit as a Category 5 hurricane, along with Nassau and the Bahamas. In the Bahamas, though, it only did around $250 million in damage. In Florida, it did $26 billion in damage, and was the costliest hurricane at the time, not to be replaced until 2005's Hurricane Katrina. It was a third costliest storm to hit Florida, behind only Hurricane Wilma of 2005 and later Hurricane Irma of 2017. Meaning that at the time it was the costliest storm to hit Florida. While it wasn't necessarily a deadly hurricane, it was most certainly a costly hurricane, and it was appropriately retired. It was only the second time it would ever be used. It was used for a minor tropical storm in 1986 that did minimal damage, and as it replaced 1980's Hurricane Allen, which did $1.25 billion of damage to Texas and was appropriately retired. This was in 1980. So it struck as a Category 5. The most recent one was actually very recent, 2018's Hurricane Michael. And this was almost as costly as Andrew, and it's the fourth costliest hurricane in Florida, I think. So this time it struck somewhere more like the Pensacola area, the Panama Beach, Florida area. The area of the state in Central Time is where it hit hardest, like a little bit of Mobile, Alabama, and it hit as a Category 5 hurricane. I'm not sure how many people it killed, but the general trend is hurricanes are moving from being more deadly forces of nature to more costly forces of nature. So when we do this, we have to look at some of the costliest hurricane seasons ever. The costliest hurricane season was 2017, which led to 4 storms being retired: Hurricane Harvey, Hurricane Irma, Hurricane Maria, and Hurricane Nate. Hurricane Harvey only killed, I think, 107 people. Some sources say only 91, but it did anywhere from $125 billion to $180 billion in damage. I read a book that said $180 billion. And Wikipedia says 125 billion, although it's a and actually, interestingly, while most sources say Katrina did 108 billion, Wikipedia says 125 billion. I don't know what's going on with this, but I would love to do some more research on this. Hurricane Irma did $77 billion in damage. I'm going to have to look that up because I thought it was $64 billion. In any case, it killed 114 or 241 people. I'm not exactly sure which. It was somewhere between the two. Hurricane Maria, though, killed 3,000 people and did $90 billion in damage around. So that's the exception. Hurricane Nate was really only retired because it was the deadliest hurricane to strike Costa Rica. But other than that, it didn't do enough damage, in my opinion, to warrant being retired.